welcome. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about reaching out, connecting, and why that is absolutely essential for healing. Whether we're talking about healing the physical body, the emotional state, our thoughts, our mind, our spiritual well-being, our soul, the whole self is really what I'm talking about. And that's actually what healing is about. It's about becoming more aware of your wholeness. So, find out, stay with me. Who here wants to find out what I have to say about why reaching out is so essential? Hello, everybody. Welcome to Mondays with Jennifer. I want to say hello to everybody who's coming on. Hello, Adisha and Olga and Tisha. Hey, so happy you're all here with me live today. Hope you're doing well. And I hope that you are already, well, you are, the people here, you are already reaching out or you wouldn't be here. So you already know something important about why we need to reach out to one another. So, but Olga says, always want to find out. Good, good, good. Yes, let me get your responses. It's always so good to have more of an interaction with these videos. And share your feedback. I mean, your experience, share how it is for you. One of the reasons I chose this topic today about reaching out and healing is that we're in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic. And I was just reading, in fact, I've seen a lot of things pop up recently about how people are becoming lonely or lonelier during this time. Now, that's a no-brainer. It's obvious, right? That people would start to feel more disconnected because we are literally physically social distancing, at least most of us, or many of us. I wish all of us that we could make this pandemic go away more quickly, right? Who else thinks it would be a really good idea to have everybody on the same page so that we could do this together? And I don't know. There's a lot going on in the world that is just perplexing, hard to understand, right? But the result is what I want to talk about today. The result of social distancing, the result of needing to keep our distance, be more careful, not connect to people in a physical way, the way that we're used to. It's hard. So there are statistics, and I mean, people are studying this. It's a fact that loneliness is on the rise. People are suffering. There have been more people reaching out in the United States, and I'm sure in other parts of the world as well. More people reaching out to get help for their mental health. And in this video, I want to talk, like I said, not just about mental health, but it is absolutely included in what I'm talking about. But you can't think of mental health without realizing that it's also affecting physical health. You can't have such a thing as just mental health. And you can't have such a thing as just physical health, really? Because the mind and the body are intimately connected. You simply cannot separate them. This is one of the fundamental principles of the Alexander technique. Who out there has ever had any experience with the Alexander technique, whether in person or online with me? I'd be curious. Let's get a show of yeses. Yes, if you've ever come into contact with the Alexander technique. How about an N for no if you've never even heard of it, never tried it, and this is you've heard about it from me, but you've never actually tried anything. I'm curious. So this is just to feed my own curiosity. I want to see what comes up here. But anyway, mind-body unity is one of the fundamental principles of the Alexander technique. And it's just a universal principle. Alexander just discovered it. In fact, Alexander discovered everything that he taught. He didn't actually invent anything except a system to use his hands to help people. But for me personally, the way he cured himself of his performance and vocal issues what he did with his own thinking to effect change in himself, to me, that's the Alexander technique. And I know there's a lot of discussion and controversy out there about that, but I don't really care. That's why my business is called The Art of Freedom. I'm interested in being free, realizing my own personal freedom, and helping other people to realize their freedom in mind, body, spirit as well. And so I'm very happy that Alexander discovered what he discovered, and he discovered a lot of universal principles. Not a lot, actually, there may be 7 or 8 universal principles that he founded everything he did after that on top of. So I digress. The Alexander technique is amazing. If you want to learn more about it, please contact me, because I do teach my students and I practice for myself what Alexander did with his thinking for himself. So I don't use my hands. Even before coronavirus, I was not using my hands, and I was teaching online. So anyway, mind-body unity. Okay, so we have that foundation now as we go into the topic of why reaching out is so essential to healing. So I'm going to talk about 3 things now about why it's so essential to reach out. The first thing is that when you're in need of healing, again, I think of healing as in not experiencing yourself as a whole. So there's a fragmentation of the self that happens. You think of yourself as either engaged in a mental activity or a physical activity, or you're doing your spiritual practices, but that's not balanced. In my humble opinion, it is not balanced when you separate parts of yourself like that. In fact, I don't think it's an illusion, actually, to think that we can separate those things. And so it's like we're fighting reality. We're fighting the reality of wholeness, and we're blinding ourselves to the truth that we are whole by paying attention to parts, the mind or the body or the spirit. And we're forgetting that you can't deny the rest of you. We are human creatures with minds and bodies and souls and emotions and spirit. You just can't separate that out. But when you do, and most of us do most of the time, because we're kind of mindless and oblivious, and we do things based on habit and ways of living that have been learned and not necessarily helpful, conscious, or constructive, that's when we throw ourselves out of balance. So the first thing I want to talk about, why it's essential to, does this make sense, by the way, so far? Okay, do you understand what I'm talking about? Is like when you are in need of healing, things are out of balance, and you need to become more aware of yourself as a whole. Does that make sense? Let me see your responses there. Okay, good. You're with me. All right, so the first reason that we want to reach out is to establish balance for ourselves. And I want to pay attention to just one aspect of this. Of course, there are endless things I could talk about on this topic, but I want to try to keep it contained and shorter today if possible, and just limited to these three things. So under the topic of establishing balance, let's keep it really simple. I find that the biggest imbalance that we experience, which causes suffering, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual suffering, whole person suffering, is because there's an imbalance between our awareness of our inner world and the outer world. Now, I might be wrong on this, but this is my experience, and I see it happening in my own life over and over and over and over again, and I see it in my students. I see it in just everybody around, okay? It's a way of looking at this topic that might be very helpful if you consider. When you're suffering, your attention is likely to be mostly focused on the suffering. Whether it's emotional suffering, like, oh, I feel so bad. But you see, when I do that, my body goes like this too. When you're depressed, you're emotionally depressed, but your body also is physically depressed. You can't just have the mind or just have the body. It doesn't, just not, it isn't like that. We're not designed like that. So when you're suffering, there tends to be, I believe, an inward and downward and compressive activity inside of us. So you're more aware of your inner world and turmoil and discomfort than you are of the world and the ease in the world around you. Olga just said if there were a competition in suffering, I'd win it. Not sure you want to win that one, Olga, but hey, gold star. Let me hop over to the comments and read what everybody else is saying too. That one just popped up for me. Olga says, talk about split personality. Right. What about at least keeping the mind and the body intact and together? I never thought of that before. Well, yeah. But the thing is, you can't do it all the time because that would be an ideal to strive for, but it's a perfection and we humans are perfectly imperfect. So you can have the idea of wholeness and tend towards that, but you can't put the pressure on yourself to want to always be aware of this and all. You can't always be in balance. In fact, balance itself is never static. It's constantly in flux. So there is constantly an awareness of the inward and the outward. There's always a flow. This is a flow. Think of when you breathe in and your lungs expand and the air comes in. And when you exhale, there's a letting go. There's the lungs kind of go inwards and the air comes out and then it comes in and it goes out. There's always inwardness and outwardness, and it's always in movement because we're alive and we're human. The problem happens when we overfocus on one or the other in a negative way, or actually in a positive way. If you're only focusing on the inward, well, never mind. I just complicated everything. Forget that I just said that. I'm not going to go down that road. That would take 10 hours. Okay, so anyway, that was number one. You want to establish balance and reaching out and connecting to the world around you, opening up your perspective to include that space, that world around you. That initiates this expansion and an opening outward, an opening up and out direction. Now, it's possible to overdo that direction as well, and then you would end up suffering too. I'm sure you've had the experience where you are super excited, really, really happy. You go to a party, you're celebrating, or you have a concert, and it's just an amazing concert. You have a wonderful time and everything's going really great. And when it's over, there's this emptiness. You're like, now what? And there's kind of like a letdown after the party or the concert. It's like you're super high and up and out and expansive and everything. And then all of a sudden it's like the rug is pulled out from under you and you are bereft. And then you have the opposite problem where you've been over-focusing on the outside, the outer world, and you've neglected your inner experience. Then you'll suffer an imbalance that way too. And that kind of suffering, again, you might notice it more as an emotional thing, but the body is always also included. Okay, that's the thing. People recognize the imbalance in usually in one or more areas. You can recognize that you have an imbalance because it shows up in knee pain or arm pain, and you don't think there's anything else wrong until you start wondering and examining and inquiring in yourself if there perhaps is a corresponding mental attitude or emotional outlook, and then you'll start to see how the pieces fit together, and it's never just physical suffering. Okay, so that's number one, establishing balance. The second reason I want to share with you as to why reaching out is essential to really heal, become whole. Second one is because when you're suffering, because you're a human being, and human beings are social creatures, and we do need the support of other people and community, whether that's family or a social network. We need that contact. We need, number two, to reach out and get help. This is really hard for a lot of people. It's really hard for people to recognize, number one, that they're suffering and they need help, and then to actually take an action to reach out and ask for help. You don't even have to ask for help, actually. You just need to know that you're reaching out because you know you need help. You don't have to admit that, but when you're reaching out and you're connecting with other people, it's like you're giving yourself a lifeline because other people can help and support you. Now, you have to reach out to the right people, right? You have to be a little discerning about who you're going to reach out to, because when you're suffering, you're more vulnerable, and you certainly do not want to reach out to people who are going to be criticizing you for feeling bad. No, don't do that. If you know somebody tends to be critical or judgmental, do not reach out to those people unless you know how to work that. Okay, but it's just, it could end up making you feel worse if you reach out to somebody who's critical and judgmental. You need to choose your support wisely. Okay, so to get help, that's the second reason reaching out is essential. Does this make sense? Okay, have you all experienced this? Like, when you're suffering and you're in pain, a tendency can be to kind of close off and shut down, shut people out, because a lot of people are ashamed of suffering. You could be really feeling bad that you're feeling bad, and that makes you feel worse, so that's not a good idea. Don't ever judge yourself for feeling bad. Don't ever judge yourself for feeling bad. Now, I'm guilty of that as well. If I am in a down mood, I have a tendency to feel bad that I'm down. It's like, Jennifer, you shouldn't be down. You know how to deal with all this stuff. You have you have the answers. You shouldn't be doing this to yourself. And then I feel really bad about feeling bad. And no, then I have to just stop and say no. And then I have to have self-compassion for myself. And then I have to do this. Open up, reach out and connect with people, because that's a lifeline. And you also start to have reality reflected back at you, so that you don't get stuck in your own limited view of things, because when you're experiencing imbalance, your perspective is I can't talk. When you're in imbalance, your perspective is skewed. You are not likely to be objective about yourself when you're suffering. So reaching out to other people is helpful in that they are going to mirror reality to you. They're going to help you see what's actually true, and they're going to help you to not listen to the negative voices that you're conjuring up for yourself. Okay, so does that make sense? The second reason that reaching out is essential for effective healing is in order to get help from other people around you. Good. I'm going to hop over to the comments, and then who wants to know the third and last one? You want to know? Tell me. Jessica says, I struggle with balance between feeling compassion and honoring suffering, and becoming excessively focused on suffering. That's right. Yeah, we have to have compassion and acceptance for ourselves and our suffering, but it's easy to go too much inward, even with something as positive as self-compassion, right? So just ask yourself about balance and go in the other direction if you're finding that you're too inward, or go more inward if you're too outward, right? For instance, during coronavirus, it's really easy to get overwhelmed and stressed and anxious and worried when you look around at how many people are not paying attention to the pandemic, right? Who think it doesn't exist. It's like they have their head in the sand or something. I don't know. Or they think they're invincible gods that can't get this virus. I don't know what they're thinking. But it's easy to look around and be over-focused on what's outside, and that can be really stressful too. So when you're doing too much of that, like you're watching too much of the news, that can be crazy making. And then recognize that you're looking too much out there. You need to go back inward. And that's where meditation, by the way, is essential as well. Having tools to bring yourself back to be present to your own experience. I digress there a little bit, but that's a very important digression. Meditation, meditation, meditation. And if you want to learn, actually, I'm going to say something very soon towards the end of this video. I'm going to give you a special offer for a free meditation. So make sure you stay to the end, because that's just for today. Again, sorry, I started to get off track here, but yes, Jessica, definitely makes sense. And Adisha says balance is key. I mean, I like that one. I'm going to put that up here because it's fun to put those quotes up there. Thanks, Adisha. I love it. He also says, it is so easy to wallow in self-pity and get stuck in the cycle of suffering. Yes, especially soon after an unfortunate event or setback. It takes a lot of strength to get back on the right path. Yes, it does. I think we can fast track that recovery and healing process as artists. Yes, I agree with you 100%, Adisha. Yeah, we can. That's the other thing I'm going to talk about towards the end. I'm going to let you all know about my next creative healing event at the end of this video. So, and that is a way to process emotions, and that's very healing. Okay, great. What else is up here? Jane says, yes, I keep it to myself. Jessica says, I've definitely found out the hard way who is safe to reach out and who isn't. Yeah. Anybody else? Has anybody else found that out the hard way? Let's see a lot of thumbs up here. I'm sure everybody has found that out the hard way. Yep. Oh, Jane says, also, I don't want to bore people. Don't go there. Don't go there. If people are going to get bored, that's up to them, right? That's on them. Don't prevent yourself from reaching out to people because you're worried about their reactions. That's my little 2 cents worth of advice there. Adisha also says, sometimes a reflective journal helps if you do not feel comfortable reaching out immediately following a trauma. Healing takes time. I couldn't agree with you more there. And in fact, this is kind of a subtle thing, but you just said it. For me personally, sometimes it's really easy to reach out to people. And there are other times when I'm not really wanting to do that. But one of the best ways to reach out without reaching out is to write in a journal. Yeah. And for me, that has been something I've done my whole life. Not always every day. There have been periods where I've stopped journaling, but it's a very, very wonderful tool to be able to just write, because you're getting your thoughts on paper and out of your head. So it is a way of reaching out. Okay, so the journaling idea is really, really, really useful. Thanks for that. Olga says, I rarely worry about what people think. That's great. I'm considerate, but I try not to focus on pleasing people, so to speak. That's wonderful that you've learned that. I'm still working on that. A lot of people in my groups are people pleasers. So that's great. That's great that you've learned that, Olga. All right, so who wants to know the third one? Third and last. Third and last reason why reaching out to connect is essential for healing. You want to hear it? Anybody want to hear it? Drum roll. Number 3 is to give help. So even if you're reaching out to get help, that's actually not so different from reaching out to give help, paradoxically, because when you're sincere in your reaching out to connect with people because you need help, you're actually giving a person an opportunity to practice helping, to practice their generosity. You're giving them an opportunity to reach out, because the connection goes both ways. When you reach out and someone responds, they reach out. So when you are reaching out to get help, you're also giving them the opportunity. So you're helping them, giving them an opportunity to reach out back to you. So you can also reach out when you're not suffering to give help, but it's so powerful. So powerful. There are stories galore in the internet, all over the place. Stories galore, and I'm sure you've experienced this at some point in your life, maybe many times as well, that when you're down, one of the best ways to come back up is to help somebody else up, because it forces you to come outside of yourself and to think outside of yourself and to have compassion for someone out there. So when you're thinking, the thing again, it's this balance issue. If you're just thinking about your own suffering, you're blind to other people's suffering. There's a really wonderful book by Viktor Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning. I highly recommend that to everybody. This was a man who experienced the concentration camps as a German Jew during World War II. It is one of the most inspiring books I've ever read. It was one of the worst, most brutal, unbelievably awful, dehumanizing, painful situations I can't even imagine. And yet he was able to think differently. He was able to see it differently and to come out of himself, to not pay attention to his suffering. I'm sure he did have to pay attention to his suffering and heal himself, of course, also. But he came out of himself to help others, and in helping others, he helped himself. I'm sure there was that energetic exchange going on. It's a really, really great book. Read it if you haven't. It is great. So there's an energetic exchange that happens when you reach out to get help and when you reach out to give help, because you're connecting with other human, living, breathing, moving, feeling, loving people. Okay, so those are the 3 reasons that I've come up with. Of course, there are infinite reasons. These are just 3 that I've come up with to share with you today. 3 reasons why it's really essential. It's essential to reach out when you're suffering. It's healing. What's healing for you emotionally is healing for the body. If you have knee pain, you probably reach out and go to the doctor, or go to a physical therapist, or go to an Alexander teacher like myself. You reach out to get help with your body pain, right? So it's body pain, physical pain, emotional pain, spiritual pain. If you're in spiritual pain, you seek out someone who can help you with that as well. Again, it's all connected. Do you see how it's all connected? Good. All right, good. So I promised you, was this useful? I hope this is useful, that these 3 things are useful and that you can use them. Hopefully you're not suffering, but I think part of life itself is learning how to become more and more and more conscious of our wholeness, which means that life is a healing process. Life is a healing process. We're not expected to be perfect. Another, by the way, a definition of perfection also is wholeness. I love that. So it's an ideal, perfection or wholeness. This is an ideal, but life is our tendency. It's our chance. It's an opportunity to tend towards more conscious awareness of the reality of our wholeness. I think that's why we're here. So if you're conscious of that purpose, then act on it, right? Do what it takes to take yourself one baby step forward on that path towards awareness of your own wholeness, or realization of your true self. So I did promise you I would tell you about my next creative healing event. Why is my creative healing event relevant? I think that should be pretty clear. But just to make this explicit here, I'm providing a place, a space on the internet. When I first conceived the idea of a creative healing event, I was imagining doing it in beautiful places with gorgeous nature. I love beautiful nature. I love the Mediterranean. I was imagining doing a creative healing event in Portugal on the Mediterranean in a beautiful villa. Well, we're in a pandemic and I'm not traveling for a good while. So I've started doing these sooner than expected, and that's a blessing. So that's a hidden golden lining to the pandemic, is that I am offering these now rather than waiting until next fall or next year when I can go off to Portugal or Maui or whatever. So anyway, the creative healing event is now, it's a virtual space, but in some ways that's even more powerful because you get to experience the healing where you are. You don't have to go somewhere or do anything to get the healing. You get to stay where you are in your own home. And I create the space and the intimate environment, which is optimal to my healing process. It's a Zoom meeting. Some of you attended the very first one that I did a few weeks ago, a month ago. But most of you probably weren't there. And so I want you to know that it's something really, really special. In fact, if anybody here on live now or watching the replay actually attended the creative healing event and the improvisation that came afterwards, if you just want to say a few words about what that was like for you, that would be really great. And I am going to share the link to you, everybody here, so that you can come. The next one is on Sunday, June 28th. It's going to be from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock-ish Eastern time. It's on a Sunday, as I said. And I'm not sure if I can actually do this, but I'm going to try. Kay says it was wonderful. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen so that you can actually see. No, that didn't work. No, it's not working, sorry. Forget that. This is not working. I'm coming back. Never mind. I have to learn how to use the system better so I can share my screen next time. But I will share the link to the page so that you can sign up and come. It was really special. What we do is we gather. First, there's a welcome PDF before we even meet, so you can start thinking about what you want to bring up for yourself. You don't have to share anything publicly at all whatsoever. You can keep it all inward to yourself. But you'll be in my virtual Zoom studio with the other people who are interested. And I'll take us all through a guided healing process, which is very, very powerful. And you'll probably discover some new positive things about yourself through the process that will be healing. Whether you're seeking physical healing, emotional healing, spiritual healing, whole person healing, as we've talked about, this is a very powerful place to do it. Adisha says the Zoom session was excellent. Thank you. It's great. I'm so glad. Yeah, and then after we have the Zoom gathering, then I do a violin improvisation, a healing improvisation, where I actually take what came up for people in the Zoom session. I take them in and I process your suffering through my creative process, where I get in touch with what I call my creative muse. It's really my intuition, I get inspired, hopefully, God willing, I get inspired. I just empty myself and something comes through, and that something is a healing energy. But it's not woo-woo. I am not a new age person, and I don't want people to confuse my creative healing event with something new age. It's not. This is me doing something for you. So I hope that you can join us. You can pay whatever you want. I do not want money to be an obstacle to people being able to participate in this. So you'll see when I give you the link, which I can't do from here, unfortunately. I'll give it to you immediately after this. You'll see that I have two payment options. One is pay whatever you want, as little or as much as you want. And then the other option is to get a subscription, but you can read all the details on the page that I give you. All right. And then the last thing I want to tell you is that if you sign up today, and by the way, space is limited for this because I want to keep it small and intimate. So it really is limited to, I think I set it at 20 people. So it's small, intimate, 20 people who are pay what you can, not subscribers. I can't have more than 50 people on the Zoom meeting. But I really want to keep it in as small as I can within that range to make it a positive healing environment that's safe and just a really, really good energy. So make sure you sign up today if you can, if you want to come, because I'm not opening it to infinite people, like I said. So if you sign up today, I'm going to send you the guided meditation that I just did today for my Alive with Spirit group. That's the membership that you can subscribe to if you're interested. Every Monday I do a live weekly, sorry, that's redundant. Every Monday I do a live guided meditation for the Alive with Spirit community. And today's meditation was very relevant to this topic of reaching out for healing. It was, what did I call the video? I called it Ease, Inside, Outside, and Everywhere. It's about getting in touch with ease and healing inside of yourself and around you. So, like I was saying earlier today in this video, when you look out into the world these days in the midst of coronavirus and with all the racial tensions in the United States and around the world, it is really easy to start to get overwhelmed and anxious and worried about the future of humanity and our environment and everything. And let's not go there. Let's instead find the ease around us, because there's so much that's good and positive and free and open and loving and positive and kind and compassionate and healing and healthy out there. So this guided meditation will help you find balance, guaranteed. I'm going to send that meditation to anybody who signs up for the Creative Healing event today. I'll send it to you and it'll be yours. You'll be able to download it and keep it forever if you want. So that's for everybody that signs up today. Please feel free to share the link with anybody. Okay, this is not just for musicians, obviously, this is for anybody. This is a healing event. So if you have friends that are in pain, physical pain, friends that are suffering emotionally, friends who are finding it difficult or challenging in this time of coronavirus, family members, anybody that you think could benefit from the Creative Healing event next weekend, please share the link with them. I would be so happy to have this. My intention is to have this as a regular monthly event. And I would just be so delighted if it were filled with people who are open to healing every single time and that they leave feeling better. That's my intention. I want you to feel better after that. And also to have tools to help yourself after the event. Okay? So I think that's what I've got for you today. And as soon as I sign off, I will put that link to the Creative Healing Workshop in the comments, and I'll also be posting it in various other places, so you won't miss it. Okay? Let me hop over to the comments before I turn this off. Let's see, Jane says, it was powerful, moving, and inclusive. You're talking about my Creative Healing event? Thank you, Jane. That's great. Let's see. There was a quote someone. Oh, yes. Adisha. I love that quote. It is the best quote from the whole book. It's maybe the most famous one anyway. I don't know if it's the best one. But Adisha says, the book by Viktor Frankl is superb. Yes. I particularly like the quote, quote, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Thank you for sharing that, Adisha. That is a famous quote because it is so good, so true. And I had even heard of it in the context of the Alexander technique, because what I'm teaching with the Art of Freedom and the Alexander technique is exactly that. We are learning how to identify that space, and we're learning how to do what we call constructive thinking, which is choosing our response in that space. And that is wherein lies our growth and our freedom. And that's why my work is called the Art of Freedom Method for Conscious Living and Masterful Artistry. So, yep, that's the key. That's it right there. Thanks again so much, Adisha, for that. And I think, oh, here's someone else. MC Phoenix says, hey, hello. He says, everything is always helping us to realize our freedom. It's just the way we've been taught to look at things. Like Jennifer said, as separate. Yeah, there's really no separation. We are all part of life, helping life. So know you are helping yourself when helping others. Thank you. I love that comment. It's big, but I'm going to try to put it up here anyway. There. Thank you so much for that. It's perfect. Let's just end with that. Let's end with that perfection. Great. Come to my creative healing event on Sunday. If you can't come, sign up anyway, and you'll have access to the recording. And yeah, check out the page as soon as I post it. All right. Lots of love to all of you. Be well, find balance, and reach out. Come to the creative healing event, reach out in that way, and also help others by telling them about the event. Please, I'd be so grateful, because I feel very strongly that it's meant for a lot of people. So we'll see where it goes. Thanks again. Have a beautiful day, beautiful week, and I hope to see you next weekend. Lots of love. Bye.